He don't stand up. I just like to fix my stuff. Oh yeah, is Adrian's Two families. It's actually like it's good. Everybody else lived outside.
Good morning, everybody. Can y'all hear that all right? All right, I am going to go ahead and get started because I want to make sure we have as much time as possible for our presentation this morning. And but before we begin, we always start class with prayer time. We're not going to do it exactly like we normally do it or there, just for the sake of time. But before I pray, is there any updates on specific kind of new things or updates that anybody needs to share? Jack Davis was able to come home yesterday. Raymond texted me in the morning that he was heading home. For those of you, is everybody somewhat familiar with Jack? During the week, Jack's daughters called the office and just said, could y'all go check? He hasn't been answering his phone, and he had fallen and hadn't been able to get up and had been on the ground at his house for about 18 hours or so. So it was not a great thing. And so by the time he got to the hospital, he had a lot of things that for them to check up on. And so anyway, he was able to be there for a couple days. He's back home now. But anyway, there's a chance he may be at church today. Who knows? But yeah, it was a pretty scary thing. So that's the update on Jack. And but thankfully he texted, and his daughters kept texting that a couple days at the hospital with nurses giving him Jello and stuff constantly was very good for him. So I could just picture him being like, could I have another one of those? But anybody have another update on just any new information? Susan.
You know about the Donna and Jim are back home and in Adelaide.
Okay, yes, that's right. Donna, Paul, John, and Jim. Donna had a scare with her heart. She had went in for an appointment that was a scheduled appointment, and while she was there, she fainted, and so they were pretty concerned about that. She's wearing a heart monitor now, but they were able to come back home and were able to go on their trip they wanted to go to Abilene. So yes, thank you. Those were kind of the two things that day that were kind of a little scary. But trying to think. There's nothing else? Or Susan, one more thing?
You know Rex Hoffeld?
Oh yeah, I know him.
His daughter-in-law had surgery for cancer on Thursday, and she's recovered really well.
Okay, great.
So that's Missy Hoffeld.
Okay, Missy Hoffeld, Rex's daughter-in-law, had surgery for cancer, and it's going well. Also, I'll add Dalton Fowler, the Fowler's grandson, was having the thyroid problems, was able to have half of his thyroid removed, and they believe that it doesn't have cancer in it, and so that they're really thankful for that. And thankful he still is able to have half his thyroid instead of having to take the whole thing. Yeah, Floyd. And your brother?
He's doing okay.
Doing good, okay.
He's out of the woods.
Okay, great.
Very close friend of mine. He was my umpiring buddy for the last 20 years. He passed away Friday night.
And what was his name?
Mark Cooley.
Mark Cooley. Okay.
He lives between here and Waco.
Here in Waco. Okay. The Cooley family. We'll be praying for them. All right, y'all. Let's pray, and then y'all are going to get to hear from Anna Kate, and we're going to talk about Uganda. Dear God, thank you so much for all you do for us. Thank you for this beautiful morning you've given us and the opportunity we have to be together. And it's such a blessing that you give us, church family, where we're able to go through hard times and good times together. And I love the fact that once a week we're able to come together and to learn more about you and to take care of each other, check in on each other. We ask that you be with those families that we've mentioned this morning. Watch over them. We're thankful for the answered prayers, and we're continuing to lift up those who need more prayers. We're thankful that Jack is okay. We pray that he can continue to heal. We're thankful that Donna's doing all right. We're thankful that Dalton's surgery went well. And we just pray that you be with the Cooley family, the loss of their loved one. And we're thankful to hear that Missy Kauffeld's procedure went well. Father, we know many in our church family who are hurting and in need with other things, like the Ricky family, and we want to continue to lift them up. We pray that you be with Anna Kate this morning as she shares and talks about her mission work that she got to be a part of in Uganda and the work that you're doing there. And we're just so thankful for her and everything she's done this summer for our youth group and for even the adults too. And we just pray that you give her encouragement as she shares with us, because we know we'll be encouraged. And it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Okay, so I've got this cool little table thing set up, but it's mostly because I didn't want Anna Kate to feel like she had to stand up by herself the whole time up on the stage. But first thing, tell us about Hope Speaks, and tell us about how you got connected with this organization in Uganda.
Yeah, okay. So Hope Speaks is a nonprofit. It's a team that I went with to go serve with in Uganda. So that was through actually Abilene Christian University, where I'm in school. So one of my department's professors, I'm a speech and language pathology major, so you'll probably hear me say SLP. That's what that stands for. That's what I hope to be someday. But one of our professors knew of this organization. So in the year 2019, she just took a group, just on their own, not through ACU, just took a group over there, really loved it, thought, wow, this could be a really cool mission experience, and so came back to ACU. She wrote a proposal to our missions department at Abilene, and they accepted it. So the trip that I took is classified as what's called a WAM trip, which is worse with the several other students who were with us, and then we got course credit for it, but we also got to go on this really cool trip. And so we took 7 students and 2 faculty overseas to Uganda. And so Hope Speaks is, I'll show you this next picture. Those are some pictures actually from that I took in Uganda, just of the road, what we passed, and then assigned to one of the clinics in Uganda. And so, I clicked it too much. Okay, so the first picture, that is Ben and Carrie. They founded Hope Speaks. So Ben is the husband. You'll hear me say his name a lot because he worked with us most. He was born and raised in Uganda. When it was time for him to go to college, he had a sponsorship, came to America, met his wife Carrie. She is an SLP. They got married, never wanted to go back to live in Uganda. However, after doing a lot of research, Uganda had 1 SLP in the whole country. And so just seeing that need, and the millions of people that needed services, they decided to move overseas, and they started Hope Speaks in 2016. And so those are their 3 kids. Bridget and Shalwa were adopted from the same orphanage that Ben was raised in Uganda. And then Judah is their biological son, and he'll be 5 this year. So we spent a lot of time with them. Our team lived in their house with them while we were there for those 3 weeks, and so we really got to grow close to them. In the middle is Penina. She is the Ugandan SLP. So one really sweet thing about Hope Speaks that I love so much is Ben and Carrie's goal is to not only provide therapy services for people in Uganda, but to train other Ugandan SLPs to eventually take over. So that way they're fully educated and can practice.
You're not counting on people to come in from other countries all the time. Yeah.
So what they need volunteers for is we went over to help partner with Ugandan SLPs and teach them what we know, so that way they can stay there and take over.
Do you mind me asking, I'm sure you get this all the time, but quickly, what are a few things that SLPs do that are helpful? If Wayne Joe someday says, I want to be a speech pathology major at ACU, I would say okay, well, what does a good parent say? Well, what are you going to do with that after you graduate? That's the question, right? Yeah. So what are some of the things that speech pathology majors help people with?
Yeah, real quick, I like to say we can do anywhere birth to death, basically. So you can work with infants, you can do feeding, swallowing. We work a lot with that. So even older adults who had strokes, we do feeding, swallowing. Obviously with speaking, if you have some sort of stutter or a kid is nonverbal, so we work with a lot of kids who have autism, working on communication skills, anything in that sort of realm that falls under that.
Awesome, perfect.
So, yeah.
So Uganda had 1, and now Ben comes to the U.S., marries 1, and realizes, hey, we have a huge need for this. And you hadn't started talking about Nishiba yet.
So Nishiba is the social worker for Hope Speaks. So they're slowly getting bigger, and so they can't really train social workers, but Hope Speaks partners with a program, the college in Uganda, and to get social workers to come work for them. And so her big job is, I'll kind of explain I guess later on, was to call the families of the clients that we see, the kids we see, and to say, hey, we're going to be at this location at this time, come. If people didn't come, they didn't come. But if they were going to be there, we were going to serve them and provide therapy for them.
Cool.
So that was her position.
All right, so this is Hope Speaks.
Yeah, and then this was our team that we went with. So in the bottom left are the ACU girls. We had 6 speech path students, undergrad students go, and 1 JMC student. She's in the gray Hope Speak shirts, if you can see that. JMC stands for Journalism and Mass Communication. So she was there to document our experience and create a documentary for Hope Speaks to then use.
Awesome.
And then that's a big group picture of all of us in one of the clinics. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so by the way, my plan is for y'all to get a chance, if we have time at the end, to ask any questions you want to ask. So be saving those in your mind if you're thinking of some. But the next question I want to ask is, what are some of the, like, you were there for 3 weeks, right? Okay, what did a normal day or a normal week look like for you or your group, and how did y'all each have different jobs that you kept the entire time, or did you get to do different things? What did a day-to-day work week look like?
So as an SLP undergrad, in order to practice as a speech pathologist, I have to have my master's degree, and so obviously the students I took don't have that. So we have to be partnered. If we're going to do any therapy, we have to be partnered with a certified SLP. So we took 2 professors, and then there was the Ugandan SLP, and Carrie was there. So we had, and then we met up, there were 2 other volunteers from another part of the United States that were there at the same time.
Cool.
So we really had, I guess, what was it, 6 speech therapists. And so you could we would like split into normally like 2 groups every day and go to one of several locations and provide therapy. So Hope Speaks kind of works. They have one big clinic. In Uganda, we were in Kampala, Uganda, which is the capital. And so there's big government buildings there that you'll probably see some pictures of in a second. And so at that big clinic, they charge regular therapy prices. And so that's mainly where Carrie works. She charges regular therapy prices because those people can afford that.
Right.
And that money then funds every other clinic they have. And we call them outreach clinics. And that's where they provide completely free therapy. You show up, we provide therapy. We never charge them. They build relationships with them, keep them coming back, and then Shiva calls them, making sure they're good, kind of thing, as a social worker. And so this is one of the first locations I went to. This is Nansana. I don't have as much pictures here because we didn't take a lot of pictures there. But this is where we went on Mondays. So Mondays were Nansana. And so some days, some groups went there, some groups went to a different location.
Okay.
And so
for you, Mondays
for Mondays, yeah, Mondays were Nansana for me. And so Nansana is like this, the first day we went, the first Monday we were there, this is where we went, and this is only the second time Hope Speaks had gone to this location.
Okay.
And so if you look in the middle picture, you can kind of tell, there's mats on the ground, we're on the floor of a restaurant. The people that own this restaurant, you can see the menu on the back wall, but the people in this restaurant knew Ben and Carrie, and they were like, hey, you're welcome to do therapy here. We're not open in the morning. So we would get there from like 8 and be there until 2 or 3 and provide therapy for whoever came. They opened this location because at another one that you'll see in a second, it was people were walking hours and hours and hours to get there because they lived closer to this area, but they wanted their child to get therapy. So they would walk 3-4 hours a day, make sure they were there on time, and then walk back home. And so it was a whole day trip for them. So they opened Nansana to hopefully be closer to a lot more families. So this is Mondays for whoever was there. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I spent most of my time here. This is Katanga. It's one of the biggest, they call them slums in Uganda, which is just pretty much nothingness areas. Their houses are maybe the size, like a 10 by 10 room, maybe that's the biggest, made of clay with a little tin roof kind of thing. 6-7 people live in one. And it's just house after house. And I have a lot of pictures of Katanga you're about to see because I spent majority of my time here. And so you'll see this big open field on the left and then a bunch of big skyscraper buildings in the back. And so that is the city capital that's in the back. And so what was so heartbreaking about Katanga is it's such a low income area, but government officials just kind of look down on it. And they don't do anything. And that just kind of tells you, that kind of just tells you a little bit about Uganda's government problems right now, but that's kind of the big open field. And then the green doors, those are Hope Speak doors. We have 2 of them. There's one to the right of it that's not in this picture. And you just open those doors, and it's a little 10 by 10 room with 2 mats on the ground, and that's where we did therapy. And we just sat on the ground, and they came in, and then they left, came in, left. And then if you can see on that picture with Hope Speaks, there's like this little window pane looking thing, and there's a little black rectangle. If you squeeze through that black rectangle sideways, you enter the school. That's in Katanga. And so it was just right next door to us, but there's, like 6 or 7 classrooms in there, which are just separated by sheets. And there's about 60 kids in what would be like half the size of an American classroom.
Wow.
Just all in there. And so we got to see the school kids a lot, which you'll see on this next slide. So we would go read to the school. We normally would just ask, like, hey, could we read to your class today? And they're like, yes, please, come on in. And so we'd go read.
Now, I gotta ask this. I know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask so that y'all know the answer. How did they know? Did you have a translator with you, or?
Yeah, so actually the main language in Uganda is English. And so most of the time you didn't need a translator. However, the other language, their national language, is Ugandan, which is what they speak. So sometimes you need a translator. So Nashiba, Panina, any of or just a volunteer that spoke Ugandan would be with us. Normally you have at least one person that would be able to translate if need be. But majority of the time you were able to communicate pretty easily.
That's pretty cool. I've never been on a mission trip to like a third world situation where it wasn't, man, I'd love to talk to you, but my Spanish is rough or something like that. So that's pretty cool.
We picked a little bit up, at least more therapy terms, just like regular conversation terms.
Sure.
But yeah, so that was made it really easy to do a lot more things. Than we thought.
All right, so I interrupted you. So.
Oh no, you're good. So this was just like doing therapy in Katanga. You see, it's a little small room, and then reading in a classroom. And then, so this is a video. In this video, a lot of the times when we were providing therapy during the day, you can, because I said earlier, you have to be partnered up with a certified SLP. We can't do therapy on our own, so sometimes everyone's partnered up and you kind of have nothing to do, and it's like, okay, I guess I just sit around and wait. But you're sitting around in the slum, and there's kids left and right of you. I mean, everywhere they're just walking around because the parents are like, leave the house for the day. And so they go hang with friends, walk around, and so you play. And so this was actually all of the school kids, and you'll see some kids who aren't in school. But they were on break, and they just run out into that big open field and play and do whatever. And so I was like, I'm not doing therapy. So I went out, sang a lot of PBS songs,
Nice.
Did a lot of yoga, stretching, I don't know. So this is like 45 minutes into me playing with these kids. But it's just a fun video that I thought was really sweet. It gives you a little idea of what the place looks like. So we did a lot of running as well. I was very tired physically, but it was also really fun because they just wanted to do something with somebody, and somebody was there to play with them, and that was just like the best time of their lives. And so we play, and we would rotate out, which one of us would
do therapy and which
do
one would
therapy
do
and which one would do physical
run therapy.
Therapy. And if you're like, I'm out of songs, and they're like, oh, I've got one. You're like, oh, good, you're out because I've got nothing left.
That face she was wearing when she was at the beginning of the video, I was like, I know that face. That's I've gone through Peace Like a River. I've gone through Roll the Gospel Chariot. What other songs on there? I know that.
And that was okay, I'm going to teach them how to think because I don't know what else to do. I've run out of ideas.
Yeah.
And then, so normally in Katanga and in every slum we were at, we were there. In Katanga, we were there from 8:30 until 3:30. We'd be there all day long and providing therapy. Now, the last about 2.5, 3 hours of the day, we would go do home visits. So we would leave the little clinic area, walk across the field, and this is what we would walk through. So you can see in this bottom right picture the two Hope Speaks stores, the bright green. So we'd walk coming towards us across the field, and these other two pictures is what we'd walk through. And we'd go to people who normally come to therapy, but they didn't show up for that day, and so we'd go to their home, and maybe they weren't feeling well, or maybe mom wasn't home. The kid can't walk by themselves to therapy, and so we'd go do therapy in their house, and so we do that for the last couple hours, split into 3-4 groups with one SLP and one person who could lead us through the slum because we can't navigate that on our own.
Sure.
And they'd guide us to the house. We'd provide 30 minutes, and then we'd be like, okay, who's next on the list? And we'd go for the last couple hours until all the kids were seen. So you'd stop and talk with people and hug other kids, but then you just keep going. And so that was Katanga. That was like our biggest one we were at. This is Kisokiso. This was our Thursday location. On Thursdays it was Kisokiso or another place called Kachiri. I never went to Kachiri. I was always at Kisokiso. So I don't have any pictures of that one. Kisokiso, to give you an idea, it's about a mile radius with about 400,000 people living there.
Wow.
So a little bit bigger than Katanga and a lot more people in it. Katanga's about 350,000 people in about a mile and a half radius. So Kisokiso is our biggest one, most populated. And so if you look on the picture on the right, you see Hope Speaks. And then underneath that, it's like a little black box. Well, when the sun's not shining, you know, that's our therapy room. And so it's just another 10 by 10 room, a couple mats on the ground. And so that's actually off the main road in Kisokiso. And so it's a lot easier for people to get to and stuff like that.
Nice. And these are owned, this one and the last place, Hope Speaks owns them. The first place you went to was a restaurant.
Yeah, but yes.
So the hope is maybe someday to
have a clinic there.
Okay.
Yeah, so the hopes have a clinic at Nansana. That's just like the up and new coming one. They've been at Katanga and Kisokiso since they started there, and about 2017 was when they started going there. So a lot of their clients they've either seen for a long time, but they're constantly getting new ones.
Yeah.
And so so that was Kisokiso. And then on Fridays we normally did some sort of service, some sort of something else. And so the first Friday we were there of the week, it was Disability Awareness Day in Uganda. And so normally they do kind of like a march through the city, you know, orphanages and schools that take care of kids who have special needs or families on their own all get together, they make posters, and they march through the city, the city capital. However, the government said you're no longer allowed to do that. And so the people who kind of are in charge of this day found this big open field. It's kind of like, this is a panorama that I took, but it's kind of like a size of, I don't know, like a football field, just a big open field. And they put up all these tents and chairs, and so in a lot more people. This is at the very beginning, like before the day even started. We got there at about 8, and we're there until almost 5. And so a lot more people showed up, but it was a day full of, they did dances. We marched in that area to music. I mean, all different kinds of stuff happened. Hope Speaks was there to provide screenings. So a screening, I'm gonna try and give you all very basis. So again, undergrad student, I can't provide real therapy legally.
You're not providing kind of like if someone tells me that they need certain kind of marriage counseling, I can say, hey, I can give you advice, but I'm technically not a licensed marriage family.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I'm just not a licensed SLP, and so, but we can provide screening, and a screening is basically just sitting down with the child and whoever's with them, parent, teacher, friend, whoever brought them, and saying, okay, what are your concerns about them? And that's just do they need to come be evaluated to go to Hope Speaks, go to one of our clinics? And so that day we did over 100 screenings of children, and so we sat we had a tent set up, and I think, so this was pictures of the march, some of the posters they had, just that I was designed for a purpose, I made in a wonderful and amazing way, that education is life itself, children with disabilities are entitled to that. And so that's just the marching, and they would pull you into their marching, you just go with them, and they were just excited that you were there. But it's just raising awareness. Over there, it's very much children who have disabilities are very much below the below and have no rights. If you want to send your kid to school but they have a disability, you're paying triple what another family would pay for their kid to go to school. And so a lot of those kids don't go to school. And so this is just, raising the awareness, being a part of it. And then this is us doing some screenings and hanging with the kids in our tent. And so it was a really, really cool and honestly just fun day to be a part of. And there was face painting, and it was like a carnival kind of thing over there. It was just really sweet day to be part of. So
that's cool too, because here, this is another example. I don't know how many of you have children or grandchildren who have special needs, disabilities, but to think that, the second you have a child born with special needs, you're like, oh, they've got no shot. I think people feel that even here. And here there are people to advocate for them, let alone oh man, what a waste, what a drain on society. So, and I know part of what you said with speech pathology is a lot of times y'all do work with special needs kids who maybe can't articulate. So that's really cool that y'all got to be a part of it. My next question I want to ask is, I'm sure over the course of all this you had certain people that their stories kind of pricked your heart. So if any of you have ever been on a mission trip, you sometimes get to meet individuals that you're just like, man, I really connected with this person. So I was curious, did you have one or two or three people that for you were a really like, oh man, I really loved meeting this person and learning about this person?
Yeah, I definitely have a couple. One of the biggest ones, so like I said, that slum Katanga I was at was the one I was at the most, and this is Safina. Safina is 11 years old. She has cerebral palsy, or CP. That's probably what I'm saying most often, but so you know what that is. And so I saw her every week I was there at Katanga. Her mom was very good about bringing her there. And so her mom's the lady in the second picture. I'm holding her in the first one, her mom's with her in the second one, and then that's actually us at her house in the third one. So with Safina, she'd been going to therapy for a while. But if you can see her hands in that first picture, they're very tight to her body. She has zero control. She doesn't verbally communicate. However, we quickly learned that she has very good control over her big toe. And so you can see it in the last one. In the very first picture, you see like bubbles. And so she's actually pressing a button that we adapted with her toe.
Cool.
And so what we ended up doing with her is, it's a little more speech therapy terms I feel like I'm about to use, but we got what's called a core board, which if you've seen a kid with special needs, I know. If you see a kid with special needs, they may be pushing buttons that say a word.
Yeah.
And so we got a very low tech one, which means it's just like a regular piece of paper and there's pictures. They don't speak when you press it because it's low tech. There's no way for them to charge them really over here. So it's low tech, you push it. But our goal was to adapt one to her. So Safina's mom, so moms over there are named after their children who come to therapy. So Safina's mom would be Mama Safina.
Oh.
That's what we would call her.
Cool.
And Safina, and so was always good about bringing her. And she would travel 2 hours to get to Katanga, be there for therapy, and then travel on her back. And so moms over there put them on their back, tie a little scarf, and she walks. So she put Safina on her back because Safina can't walk.
Wow.
But in her house, in the house they live in, she has a wheelchair that you kind of see a part of. And so we wanted to adapt something for her wheelchair so that way people didn't have to like hold up the board at her foot and then take it away because they don't want to sit at her feet anymore. So me, another student, and our professor, that's Lori Crane with the blonde hair on the left. You can see her. She's our professor that knows about this organization the most. We went to her house and really just went to work. As speech therapy comes with some creativity.
That's cool.
And so we took a binder, cut it up, taped it together, Velcroed. You can see the board in the first picture. Velcroed that to it, taped this arm contraption to her wheelchair, clipped it so it hangs up. Anyway, it ended up staying, but she's now able to use her foot. And so the question with her was like, does she like know the words? And as soon as we taped that board up, she points to the words, "I love mom."
Oh, cool.
And it's just like a really cool thing that she knows language, she has language, she just hasn't had the resources to express it.
Communicate it. Yeah.
And so hers is a very powerful story. So that's her family. We took a picture with them. But just a really sweet moment that what we were doing was just really impactful.
Yeah.
And what was so cool about Safina Stories, they're Muslim. Muslim's a very big religion over there. And normally that's like, oh, you won't interact with those kind of people. Christians shouldn't interact with them. But they were like, these people love us so much. Like, yes, we're going to welcome them into our house, and they're here to help us. They're not here to convert us. And that was just like a really sweet thing that we got to talk with her mom about. And she's like, y'all just loved me more than anybody else has loved me and my daughter. And that's very important.
Yeah, that's a good first impression, as opposed to necessarily a, hey, you might be lost. It's, hey, I just want to love you, know, and then see where that goes.
Exactly. So she was one of our big stories. This story was big to me, probably nobody else. This was the last day of therapy we provided the last week I was there. I mean, the next day was like our debrief day, and then we left. So this was also in Katanga. I was paired with another clinician the whole day long. This was like the last hour we were there. And the Ugandan SLP, Panina, she comes over to me and our professor, and she was like, hey, just had this girl show up. She's deaf And I just like, I've never seen, she brought her audiogram. If you don't know what this, that's like the hearing screening test. It's just a bunch of graphs. She's like, I've really never read one before. I don't know how, like, I don't know what to do here till know. Well, Lori is the professor. She looks at me, and I know sign language. I've had a little bit experience in this world. I had just taken, audiology in school. My brother is hard of hearing. I've seen a lot of audiograms before. I've done a lot of work with this kind of stuff. And so she was like, okay, well, you go over there, see what you can do. So I was like, okay. So I go over. So this is Hasnat. Hasnat is 6 years old, I believe. And she really is really cool. So her mom's sitting with her, and so I go talk to her mom, and her mom's like, okay, we put her in deaf school, but she has hearing aids. And you can see on the audiogram, if you know the technical stuff, she has the capability to hear with her hearing aids. She's just never been taught how, and what she's listened for, really.
Yeah.
And so she's like, we put her in deaf school, but in deaf school, she's not allowed to wear them. They take them out of her ears, and she has to be fully deaf if she's going to be in deaf school. So she's like, and mom's like, I didn't like that. I didn't want that for her, so I took her out, and we put her, what they call it normal school. I put her in normal school, and she's like, but she doesn't know anything. She's
hearing sounds that she doesn't know.
Yeah, and so her mom bluntly said it. She's like, she's stupid in that school. And so I was like, okay, and so that's a problem all on its own. So I'm sitting talking with the social worker, what resources can we find for her? Anyway, so while they ended up talking just social work kind of stuff, I go and I was playing with Hasnat. And I did like a little bit of American Sign Language with her, just teaching her really basic words and teaching her low-level sounds of the alphabet to where you can hear the vibration, and are very easy for children to hear with that kind of hearing loss. And what was so cool is she, I think, was so eager to learn that she picked it up, instantly. She's signing back, she's saying these sounds. We got her to get ma, that's what she produced. And so it's just like really encouraging, and her mom heard it and just breaks down crying, and she's in the deaf school, and we thought that was going to be it, but they didn't want to help her. We put her in hearing school, and there are no resources in a hearing school. And so that day I remember being there and being like, I was really burnt out. I was really tired. I didn't want to be in Katanga again because I've been there so long, and Katanga takes all the energy out of you. And so I was like, I'm just going to be here today. And after meeting Hasnat and her mom, I was like, the Lord had me go to this. I could have gone to the other location, but I chose to go there. And I was like, I went there for a reason. And that reason is I was the only person on my team who knew sign language. I was the only person that had that experience, and I asked to be able to relate to them and talk with them. And so it's one of my favorite stories, just a moment of God really uses what you've done to really show up for other people and be able to be there for other people, and that was just one of my favorite stories. This isn't a client story, but one of my favorite memories of there is this is a bunch of pictures of us holding babies. And so one sweet thing about Uganda is after the first week, it's a very young population. I'm talking 75% is 35 years and younger. Very young population. And so there's a lot of babies everywhere you go. And I remember asking Ben, who's that leader, after the first couple days, I was like, can we ask to hold what's culturally appropriate here for this kind of thing? And he was like, oh, ask. If you want to hold a baby, ask, because over there, if somebody asks to hold your baby, that's the highest value, especially a white person. If they ask to hold your baby, that's my baby is beautiful. Obviously, my baby is deserving to be loved if somebody is asking to hold my child. So after that conversation, I went around and was just constantly asking people to hold their kids, and the smile that would put on somebody's face was, strikes you as in America, if you ask to hold somebody's baby, you're gonna get turned away.
Yeah.
Ew, no, maybe not.
Yeah.
But over there, it's just the biggest blessing, and so just a really sweet thing, and just seeing the smile on their faces, the kids' faces, so cool.
Yeah, I want to circle back real quick, and then I've got one last question, and then be thinking of y'all's questions if you want to ask one. But one thing about what you said, I feel like whenever you picture the things that you're good at, you probably often think about, well, every mission trip I've ever heard of involves either building a concrete floor for a family, and I don't have strength to do that, or the stamina to do that, or every trip I've ever heard of, this is what you do a VBS, and I'm not good at doing silly songs. And I just love to hear, like, this is an example of an incredibly specific speech pathology degree and task, and yet there's totally a mission work available to you to be able to do that. That's pretty cool. So my last question, I have a little tag question, but can you specifically think of something that where you felt like, you kind of have already said it, but something for you where you felt the most like Jesus at work in your heart during this trip? You may have already said it, which is okay if you did, but is there something that you feel like he particularly did work on your life and your heart during this trip?
Yeah, there are definitely several things. One of the biggest things is, I kind of said this earlier, how moms carry their children on their back. I mean, every child you see, most of the children we see can't walk. 80% of our clients have cerebral palsy, which really means they really can't walk really well unless it's a really mild case. But anyways, and so they put them on their backs, walk to therapy, go everywhere with their kid on their back, and sometimes their kid is pretty big. But we never met a dad while I was there. I never met a father. I had only met moms that brought their kids to therapy, because in Ugandan culture, if your child is born with a disability, the dad obviously assumes that must not be my kid. My family line doesn't have that, and they leave. No concern at all. And so I never met a father while we were there. I only met moms. But the moms' love and dedication to their kid was the most beautiful thing. They, again, walk miles and miles and miles with their kid on their back because they love them so much, and they know that we love them and we want to help them, and they will do anything in their power to get their kid to therapy, and to get their kid to be loved, and to get some sort of break in their day, because they don't get a break. And so we talked about, like, at the very end, my group did, like, the love that moms have for their kids it's got to be the love that Jesus has for us. He would carry us on his back for miles and miles and miles to get us somewhere where we need help, or to bring us to him. And that was, the exact same love that we got to witness every day. And one of the things that I started just feeling kind of a week and a half in was just overwhelming sense of, like, the goodness of God. And just that song, and that kind of just became what I felt on this trip, that, like, we saw a lot of hard things, and I never really in my life, questioned God and really been like, why are you letting these things happen? But when I got on this trip, I did, and I was like, where are you, like, over here? Because I'm not seeing it. But seeing these moms, I was like, there is goodness in God, because there are people here who want to help, and there is work trying to be done, and getting to just be the smallest, tiny part of that was, like, an incredible feeling, and very humbling as well. Like, I was super humbled the whole time I was there, just that I was able to be there on that trip.
Yeah, I think that'll preach. That's a good message for sure. I had a professor at ACU who would always say, that'll preach. Last tag question, and I'm going to come to you. Hopefully you got to do something like a tourist while you were there, at least for a little while. Did you get to do a safari? Did you get to do something cool like that? Do you have one or two things that was something exciting like that?
Yeah, so normally on the weekends we didn't do therapy, and so we had some time, and so we did a couple things. So the first weekend we were there, on Saturday we drove to the equator. See the middle picture and then the bottom one. So Uganda is right on the equator. Where we were living in Uganda is about 2 hours from the equator of the Earth. And so we drove the 2 hours and stood in both hemispheres. And fun fact, if you stand on that yellow line you see in the bottom right picture, you're 15 pounds lighter. I really don't know how it works. I don't know the science behind it, but that's what they said. Hey-o. And so we stood there for a while. But in the corner pictures at the top, you see me and a girl on a boat, and then you see this waterfall. That's the Nile River. So while we were there at the halfway point, we went on a 2-day safari, and so we got to go see, that's the waterfall that leads into the Nile River, which is absolutely beautiful. And cool. Then we did a boat ride.
Moses was right there.
Right there. That's what they told us. So we get on this boat ride in the top left-hand corner, and it's 2 hours down the Nile, 1 hour back. Well, about an hour, maybe almost an hour and a half, it's starting to rain, and then it really started to rain. And then it started to thunder.
Hey, you might want to talk about rain right now.
Sorry, we brought the rain over there. I just didn't bring it back with me.
Gotta bring it back.
If I brought that rain, our Earth would look right over here.
Yeah.
But it was the boat had to pull off to the side, because it's a double-decker boat. If you haven't seen one, it's the first time I've been on one, but this was us standing on the top, and we all had to go to the bottom. because the waves were crashing. Anyway, a lot of people thought we were going to die. I thought we were fine. I felt good. I thought it was kind of fun, but it did cut our tour a little short. And getting back, we were soaking wet and freezing cold, but it was very fun. And then that's me on our safari van standing on top of it. And I'll show you some animals on the next one. But we also went to a cultural dance and then like one of the markets on the last day. Were just some of the cool things. And so these are some animals for the safari. We did a night safari and a sunrise safari. And so we saw tons of elephants. These are real pictures that I took.
These aren't from Getty Images?
These aren't from Google Photos. And then we saw a lot of giraffes, a lot of monkeys. Those are some lion cubs in the road. They're really hard to see. But saw some lions. And then that was just the sunrise that I took a picture of on my phone in the morning. That's just absolutely beautiful. And then that was our group in front of the lodge that we stayed in for the night. But yeah, so.
Cool. Okay, before we finish, and before I want to, does anybody have a question you'd like to ask Anna Kate about the trip or about speech pathology or anything? Anybody have a question you want to ask?
How was the water?
You mean
the drinking water?
Drinking water?
Well, you can't drink the water there. So there was, on the last day, I did put my toothbrush under the sink and I immediately panicked, but I was like, it's the last day, it's gotta be fine. And I did ingest it then. And I was fine. But yeah, so we weren't allowed to drink it, so they had water filters, and the big thing there is staying hydrated, so you filled up your water like 4 or 5 times a day. Or bought water. Like the price of water at a restaurant there is the same price as soda, because they don't get it from the tap, so it's always bottled.
Wow. Other questions? Any other questions? Yeah, Carson and then Jason.
How did you get interested in speech pathology?
Did you hear her?
Yes, so that's a big question.
How did she get interested in speech pathology as a major?
I thought I wanted to be a teacher. My dad, who's here this morning, is a special education teacher. I thought that was cool. I got to high school, was like, yeah. Well, then I did some research and I heard of speech pathology. Never heard of it before, but I was like, that's kind of cool. And so looked into it and I was like, sure, why not? So when I toured colleges, I said, this is what I'm going to do. And I kind of learned, my brother who is hearing impaired, he had just a speech therapist, and then just learning about all the work that they do, I was like, I think this could be something that I want to do. And getting into college, I fell further and further in love with like the work that they do. I had a real passion for working with kids, really just people in general, and doing something that really isn't, a top, profession. It's not very widely, populated, and I've fallen in love with it the more I get to do it. So
cool. And Jason.
What were the weirdest foods you tried?
Oh, yeah. Weirdest foods she tried.
I ate goat while I was over there, which I feel isn't too random, but goat is very popular. There's this thing called cassava. Cassava is like a plantain and a potato had a baby. It's not good by itself. It's really plain. Food over there is very bland, which I love. I'm not a big spice person, so the bland food was great. But it's like super, and so cassava, you normally eat it with what we call purple sauce. I don't know what it was made out of, but it was purple.
Okay.
And that made it better. Again, no idea where it came from, but food over there I really loved. There's this thing called chapati bread, which is like a tortilla, but a million times better than a tortilla.
Watch yourself.
Fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables over there, so good, and they're like huge. Like mango slices were like this big. Food over there is really good.
Awesome. I have one other question, but I'm going to wait just because of time. But I want to thank you all for coming this morning, and let's give Anna Kate a round of applause. Thank y'all. That was very sweet. One thing I just want to say, and then we'll just turn on the lights and get ready for church in 10 minutes. But one thing that's cool, as a minister, I remember as a youth minister, I used to always say 2 things. Like, mission trips are for the work we're trying to do there, but I also take kids on mission trips because I want the kids to be transformed. You know what I mean? I want the youth group kids to go through an experience. And so I think it's really cool. I'm really impressed by this and impressed by y'all's work there, because it's awesome to get to not only see the amazing work that y'all are doing there with Ben and Carrie and their family, but also the work that it's doing in you and in your group, and so it's really cool. Well, thank y'all for coming, and I just encourage you to stand up, go to the restroom, mingle, get a drink of water, and we'll get everything set up for church to start in 10 minutes. So anyway, feel free to come up and give Anna Kate a high five or a side hug or something. But I'll get it.
Yes.